To speak a new language with conversational fluency, you have to know about 2,000 words in that language. That might sound like a huge number, but in this video, I'm going to share with you a simple and effective system to start building up your vocabulary from zero. And I've got a free resource at the end of the video that's going to help you on your way. If you're learning a new language, there are thousands of words you could start learning, but it's impossible to learn them all at the same time. So the question is, where do you start? I'm going to go through the things that you should be doing at 3 different levels of language ability: at basic, intermediate, and advanced levels. Now let's start with the basic. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The most important place to start when learning a new language is with the sounds. Without knowing the sounds, everything else is going to be more difficult. Without having a handle on the sounds, you're not going to remember the words in your new language as well. They're not going to be as easy to pronounce, and they're also not going to be as easy to hear when other people are talking to you, or if you're engaging with some sort of media. But as you're working on the sounds, you can also start thinking about what words you're trying to learn in your target language. And a great place to start is the 100 most common words in that language. In any language, anywhere in the world, there are some words that are just used all the time. Think about it in English. All the pronouns, for example, words like want and see and like. Words like these are the ones that show up all the time in the languages of the world. Those are the ones that are everyday words that are going to be most useful to learn first. And there are a few ways you can go about finding these 100 most common words for your language. One thing you can do is search the internet. They're available everywhere, for many of the languages you might want to learn. The nice thing about these lists is that they give you the word and the translation into English, or your native language, which helps you quickly get a sense of what the word means. A drawback to this is that often these lists are too simplifying. For example, they might tell you the base form of a word, but in languages with noun classes, words look different depending on the role they take up in the sentence. So the point is, if you're going to look up a word list like this, be cognizant that it might give you one way the word can be, but it might not tell you everything you need to know about the word. A good way to get started, but it's important to know. On the other hand, you can find a word list of the 100 most common words in languages around the world. I have something just like that for you at the end of the video. With a word list like this, what you'll be able to do is translate those words from English into your target language yourself. This has some benefits, and it also has some drawbacks. One thing is that you're more likely to go beyond the simplistic sort of one-for-one mapping that a lot of these lists are going to give you. And by doing it yourself, the benefit you're gaining is that you're working through the word list, doing the translation yourself, looking for the words yourself, which is going to help you remember the words as you learn them. It's a lot more involved than just getting a list already made for you on the internet. And so if you go this route, that's exactly what you're going to do. Take the word list in English and then translate it one by one into your target language. And pay attention to the ways that the words can be different depending on things like tense for verbs or noun classes for nouns, and all the other little things that might be affecting how the word shows up in different places. And because no matter what, this list is going to be a static thing, what you need to do next is you need to start getting input in your target language. What I'd suggest is using YouTube. You should start watching and listening to videos on YouTube, preferably conversational stuff. This could be things like podcasts, and the reason that these are so helpful is because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be hearing people and watching people converse just like you want to do in your target language. If that is, of course, what you want to do in your target language. So, start watching and listening to YouTube videos with the list that you have in hand. At first, you might find it helpful to turn on subtitles if you have those available in the target language. It won't help much to turn on subtitles in English, but to do them in your target language will be a help. And what you're going to do, difficult as it might be at first, is to start trying to pick out the words from your word list in what they're saying. It doesn't mean you have to understand everything, and of course you won't. I'm not even saying you should understand full sentences at this point, or full phrases. But the point is to start listening to your target language and starting to try to discriminate different words from the flow of speech. We've all had the experience where you start listening to a new language and it sounds just like an endless flow of speech with no structure. What you're trying to do is you're trying to investigate that for the structure that is there. And again, you might not understand 95% of what's going on, and that's okay. The point here is a little bit of understanding, but more than anything, to start getting you used to hearing your language. If you feel lost and confused, that's probably how you should feel. And so don't feel bad about it. Don't feel that you're failing because you're not understanding anything. That's kind of the point. And as you're engaging with material like this, you should also be finding a textbook that you can use to support your learning of things like grammar, sentence structure, verb conjugation, noun classes like we've talked a little bit about. Textbooks often contain simple dialogues where you can follow along and see how people are addressing each other, how they're using verbs, things like that. And this slow-paced learning you're doing with the textbook is going to complement the fast-paced learning you're doing with things like YouTube videos. And so in this beginning stage, you're laying down 2 separate tracks. You're laying down the track which is all about actually being able to use the language, meaning being able to understand it when someone speaks it and being able to produce it yourself in a real-world-like situation. And you're also laying down the other track, which is this slow, methodical, more textbooky way of learning the language. Both are going to support each other. because when you learn something about how the language is working conceptually, you're going to be able to apply that when you're listening to people or reading other things in your target language. And as you're listening to people, you might start to hear things that maybe aren't on your word list, or perhaps you notice that a word on your word list isn't always said the way you think it should be. And so you can go and consult your textbook in order to help you understand why. Remember that in this first period, things are going to be a little confusing. This is a system that is entirely new to you for describing the world, expressing thoughts and feelings, and it's one that has developed over thousands of years, and you're brand new to it. So the point in this first phase is to challenge yourself, yes, but not to feel that if you can't get the language right away, you've somehow failed. It will, of course, take a lot of time to get to a point where you feel comfortable listening to people and speaking on your own. But we're going to start that here. Now, as you continue to learn like this, you're going to start moving from a basic level to an intermediate one. You're going to start being able to identify many of the words on your word list, and the things that your textbook is saying are going to mesh with the things that you're listening to and watching in daily life, and perhaps reading outside the textbook. And as you get to this point, with the things that you're watching, you're going to start shifting your focus subtly. If you haven't picked up on them already, you're going to start noticing that there are smaller words that aren't sort of the main things that sentences are about, that people use all the time. And they may or may not show up on your word list. These are connectives, like when we say, I mean, or when we say, you know, or even when we say, like. Little things that make speech natural, but which might not be taught you by a textbook. And so you're going to start focusing on these other aspects of vocabulary. And you're going to keep expanding your vocabulary through watching and listening, and you might even start picking up other materials to read. But in addition to this, now you're also going to start practicing speaking. Now, the best part about this is that you're not going to be speaking to anyone, but you're going to start training your mouth and your memory when it comes to producing the things that you're hearing. You can start like this. When you're watching, say, videos on YouTube, pause the video every once in a while when you've heard something that you want to repeat. Something you think is new or something you've heard very often, but you just want to sort of get it into your memory. You can pause the video and just repeat it. Repeat it several times if you want. And in this way, you're going to start practicing speaking in a very slow way, which should make it less scary and also mean that you're probably starting to speak the language sooner than you would otherwise. At this point, you're also going to start shifting away from just using textbooks or bilingual dictionaries in order to figure out new words in your language. What you want to do now is you want to start trying to find out about new words in your language in that language. What this will mean is finding, for example, a monolingual dictionary in your target language and looking up new words in that dictionary. This has many benefits. For one thing, you're adding dexterity to your ability with the alphabet or whatever writing system is used in the language. You're going to have to use that in order to find the words that you hear or see. And another thing is that you're going to start having enough vocabulary besides that when you look up a new word, you're going to understand the definitions more or less. And here's where you start pushing yourself to be able to use monolingual definitions to learn new words in the language. And as you move through this intermediate stage, you're going to start looking seriously for people to speak the language with. At this point, you're going to start knowing enough to actually put the words into use in social interaction. And what this is going to do for you is it's going to cause you to have to use these words in an actual conversational setting. Doing this, you're going to learn a much wider variety of things that you actually want to say. And these sorts of things you wouldn't get just from a dictionary or a textbook, because these are situations you're not in. These are situations where you don't have something burning that you want to say to another person. As you start trying to have these conversations, it's going to go a little bit like this. First, you're going to try to say things, and you're going to have to work around the thing you actually want to say because you can't find the word or you don't know the word. But if it's the right conversational partner, they're going to help you with how to say it. At the same time, in order to get them to the point where they know what you're trying to say, you're going to have to use the target language in order to sort of kind of mash it together in a different way. Both of these things are valuable. You're building flexibility in your new language, and you're also learning new things because they come up in conversation. And again, the motivation piece here is so important. These are things that you're trying to say to somebody, not just things that a textbook wants you to repeat, or that I want you to repeat from a YouTube video. What this means is that you're going to work your way through tough spots in your target language, and you're going to learn new vocabulary that sticks. As you're approaching and moving past the 2,000 word mark, your ability in the language is going to be pretty good. And this is where it becomes important to get lots of input from everyday material in your target language. You're going to want to continue watching videos, but also doing things like reading newspapers, reading magazines, finding books in your target language. All of this is very important input. And at the same time, you're going to continue to produce output by repeating some things that you're reading or hearing. Expanding into other genres in your reading is going to help expand your vocabulary. There are some words we just don't use in some genres. For example, if you're just watching YouTube videos, you might not learn words for things like monetary, or politics, or kitchen table. And as you read more widely, you're going to start focusing on content instead of the words themselves. You're going to start playing with how much you're paying attention to each individual word. When you're reading in your native language, the best way to get at the meaning of what the words are saying is to read in whole phrases and not read each individual word. When you're learning a language, in the early stages, of course, you want to be focusing on the words themselves in order to get any meaning out of them. But at this point, you're going to start shifting away from that and shift toward reading whole phrases. Start implementing that in your target language when you're reading. But do allow yourself to move more slowly when you come upon things that you aren't sure what they mean, you've never seen it before. Give yourself the opportunity to slow down when you need to. If you want to learn more about this way of reading, check out 10 Days to Faster Reading, a small book that I read recently, which is helping me put into practice reading strategies to read more faster. I'll link it down in the description below. As you read more, you'll come across more and more words which aren't the basic ones that you're familiar with, certainly ones which go above and beyond the 100-word list. In the description of this video, as promised, you'll find one version of the 100-word list, which contains the 100 most frequent words in a variety of languages around the world. And so as you're reading, when you do find you need to slow down for a word, be sure to be repeating the words as you're learning them. This will mean that you're not just taking in the words, but also producing them, putting them not just in your ear, but in your mouth. Aside from reading, you should also be expanding the intake that you get in video form in your target language. Watch TV shows, movies, documentaries. Find more podcasts. Continue to watch YouTube. Consider looking things up in your target language when you want to learn about them. And for things that you already enjoy doing, consider learning about them again, but in your target language. This will help you to gain the words that you need to talk about things that matter most to you. And to put all this to work, continue talking to native speakers. And find more to talk to if you can. And this will help you cement the things you're learning in your mind, making them more automatic and second nature. 2,000 isn't such a big number if you know how to approach learning vocabulary in your new language. But of course, vocab is just one part of language learning. If you want to find out how to learn all the sounds of your target language in order to pronounce all the words like a native, check out this video. If you want to get more tips and strategies for language learning, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you in the next one.